This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Our goal with our videos is to empower you to be able to do the repairs on your own and save a whole lot of money and also get that great feeling of having fixed it by yourself.
Today we have a MIELE Incognito dishwasher that has an F-08 error, and the model number is G858SCV1+. And what's happening is it does a good job cleaning the dishes, but about 3/4 into the cycle, the pump is working for about 10 seconds, then it cuts off for about 5 seconds, then works for 10, cuts off for 5, works for 10, cuts off for 5, back and forth rather than having a continuous run. And then eventually it'll show you an intake drain error flashing. And if you do the code check, it shows F-08, which says that the heater pressure switch may be having trouble. That's part number 5419692. So probably this is not the culprit. This is just a switch that tells the computer if there's enough water pressure being created by the pump. But the pump is probably not creating enough pressure because most likely the run capacitor that helps it run is worn out, and it's not producing enough energy to create enough water pressure. So this is probably what needs to be replaced, the capacitor for the circulation pump. So we're going to be replacing both of these though today, just to make sure, and we'll test out the heater pressure switch to test the values as compared to the new one. So to do all that, we're going to take out the bottom rack, and we'll also take out the middle rack, and we're going to remove some water from the sump. Get those two racks out. And we'll go ahead and pull the filter. We're going to use a little baling technique to get the water out of there. So just use a small bowl. You can get a lot of that water out, and we'll use a turkey baster when we get near the end there. Just so you know, when you're working in this area, this is a temperature probe, and make sure you don't push this in. A lot of people think it might be a button. If you push it in, it'll create a leak. So you need to make sure this stays in this position. So just using a turkey baster to get the last part of the water out of the sump. It's normal for water to be in there at the end of the cycle. It's called a wet sump. So MIELE and Bosch both do that. But before you do a repair, it's good to get out as much of that water as you can. Okay. Get the machine out of the cabinet. You need to remove a couple of Phillips head screws, or there might be Torx 20 screws, one there is possible, or one up. This one has them in the up position, so we're going to zip those out, and then we're going to also remove the kick plate from underneath. So we got one of the screws. Here's another one right here. These are just Phillips heads. Sometimes these will be Torx 15, I think. Alright. So now we can wiggle the machine out. Sometimes there'll be some flooring at the bottom. You have to lift the machine up a little bit to get it to go over the up above the flooring. So you're going to lift up a little bit, pull toward us. Create like a little ramp using this paint scraper to help get it over. Helps get it up above. I'll do the same on the other side. Alright. Get that one up. There we go. So now they're both above the flooring. We can wiggle it out. Usually MIELE gives you enough drain line and enough fill line where you don't have to disconnect everything, but Just be careful as you wiggle it out. If you feel there's any resistance, you may have to disconnect the drain line and the fill line. And you want to make sure it's unplugged. Connected to the garbage disposal, like here, or it could be connected up at the air gap up by the kitchen faucet. So if it's at the disposer, you can just undo that, wiggle that off, and then when you pull the machine out, that hose can go with you and it won't create a problem. Here, get that hose off. Alright, so you have it wiggled out. I'm looking in the back. We're looking good. Drain hose is out. Power cord's out. Fill hose is okay. So now I can lay it down on its side so I can get to the bottom of it. So we can take off the bottom panel. We'll be able to get to all the important pieces. So we have to take off these little feet position sliders. One here, one on the other side. We'll put those back on the reassembly. And we're going to remove a couple of screws here, 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 and here. Get this off. So these are Phillips head screws, but on a lot of models they're Torx 15, just so you know. This is on the an older Incognito model. This one, the screws at a weird angle. Okay, so you should be able to kind of wiggle this off now, this bottom panel, get that out of the way. And here we have the heater pressure switch. So to get to the heater pressure switch, all we have to do is get off this one modular connector. And I think we just pinch it and pull it off. Wiggle it off. There we go. And we have one ground connector here. We're going to slide this one off. And then, as I recall, I think this thing just rotates to come off. Pulls out. There we go. So there's the old one. We're going to test the values here as opposed to the new one. Okay, I have my meter set for resistance reading. This is the old one. This is the brand new one. Let's check between this terminal and the outside one. See what value we get. So the two outside just show 0, 0. If we test the continuity on the two outside, keep it there for a sec. 0.4. Okay, let's try it on the new one. Oopsie. Looks like about the same. Let's try the old one again. Yeah, okay, that's the same. Let's test between terminal 1 and terminal 2 on the old one. Get a 3. Let's try on the new one. about the same. Let's try the middle to outer leg here and see what we get on the old one. Okay, that's just showing as open. Let's see if it's true of this one too. Oops. This is the new one. Yeah, open. So the values look about the same. We'll go ahead and replace this one, but more than likely this one's fine. It could be that the membrane inside might have a slight tear on it. It's possible. But probably this is okay. It's more than likely the capacitor that's causing trouble. So this little piece has to fit back into that rubber boot, and then we just pivot it. So I got it into that boot. So I got it in there. I'm going to rotate it this way so it locks in. There we go. And now we're just going to add the modular connector back. Right there. Okay. Wiggle it in there till it locks. There you go. Got it. Alright. And then we're going to add the ground connector back. Right there. Alright, got it. Okay, so now for the capacitor, it is hanging out right there, and to get to it we're going to remove a nut right there, take it off. Let's do that. Using that nut, going to take that off, and then we can get the capacitor out of there. Alright, so at this point it's good to ground out the capacitor. You don't want to touch those terminals because it can hold quite a bit of voltage. Ground it out, just make sure you have an insulated screwdriver. You're going to go between the two terminals, and that should drain out all the juice. Alright, so we'll go ahead and remove those two terminals. Okay. That one off. Get that one off. This is a 14 microfarads, can't remember the term, but 14 UF, and this is set up for 300 volts. Similar. 14, and it's set up for dealing with is up as high as 440 volts. It's a little more robust, but the main important marking is the 14. We got those on, and then we're going to put that in and just put that nut back on there to hold it. Bring it back in there into the cavity, put it through that hole, and then we'll put the nut back on the bolt to hold it, and that should solve that F-08 problem, which is basically this motor not being able to produce enough enough water pressure, and that means that something's wrong with the motor. It could be the motor's worn out, but they last a long time. More than likely the capacitor is the part that's worn out. It is possible though that you may have something caught in this housing here where the impeller spins that's blocking how well the water can move. This motor gives up pretty late in the cycle, so if there was an obstruction in here, it would probably cause mischief or trouble like right off the bat as soon as it tries to start pressure. So the code says that this device is not realizing enough pressure. Either that this was broken, which is possible, but more than likely this wasn't producing enough water pressure, either because it's worn out or because the capacitor's worn out. And my experience, usually it's the capacitor. So we're going to see if this does the trick. These are really good dishwashers. Alright, get that nice and tight. So just so you know some of the parts of the MIELE dishwasher, now that they're exposed here, this is the flap that moves up and down if water gets into the lower drip tray. Activates the anti-flood mechanism. And this is the connector to the temperature probe. This is your drain pump. In all my years, I've never had to replace one of these drain motors on the MIELE. They're really good. This is a water pressure sensor right here that helps the MIELE understand how much water is in there. It looks a lot like the pressure sensor that we just worked with. This is your circulation motor. This is the sump area. And this is the blower for when it's doing its heating cycle or drying cycle at the end. This is the salt tank reservoir and a solenoid that works with that. This one is for changing your setting to where it just does the upper rack by diverting the water. And this is just a little cover piece that goes underneath the blower housing. Just slipped out. There we go. Let's see what else we got here. This is the capacitor that cleans up the line voltage coming in to power the dishwasher. Never had to replace one of those. And down here we have the heater relay. And this is an important part. If your dishwasher stops heating, very often this relay is dirty or needs to be replaced, and it's just a box sitting there. It's super easy to work with to replace. This is if you have an overflow, too much water gets into the dishwasher, it'll go down here and end up in the drip tray and then can evaporate. That's the run capacitor that we just put in for the motor. And this is a solenoid that redirects water flow. I can't remember quite what its job is. Heater pressure switch we just worked with. And this is the impeller housing. This is also called the partition kit. So if you have dripping out of your dishwasher, a lot of times it'll come out of this little hole here. And that just means you have to replace this part here. You can get it from MIELE USA. Easy to do. You have your drain hose, you have your intake hose coming in, and that's about it. We'll go ahead and put this on its feet, see if it works. Put the drip tray back in. Make sure you get it the right orientation. You could look for this round indentation right here would line up with the float. So we're going to get it over this lip first. Bring it up. Everything lined up, and then we can add those screws back in. Okay, last screw for the drip tray. Just so you guys know, for the MIELE, it's good to have the fill valve up a little bit higher, as we see in this case. You usually have to replace these pretty often for customers. For us, though, this one's been in here for years and years and years and hasn't failed. So when you think about installing yours, I think they recommend actually that it's on the horizontal plane and that it's up a little bit higher like this. Back on. So this just fits over these wheels. That helps you to adjust those. And we have one over here. So this screw has to be pointing out toward the front. Got it. Okay. Put it on its feet. So the circulation motor sounds really good after replacing the capacitor. We'll see if it can do the whole cycle now and not give up near the end. So I think it made it through the full cycle. There's no intake drain light. Everything's clean and it drained out the water. So that's what that needed, is that capacitor. That's how to fix that F-08 problem where the circulation motor runs, cuts out over and over. Just a new capacitor fixes that. So this is a heater pressure switch. I had a customer actually repair the one they had. This is part number 5419692. So I think the way they repaired it is they pried, using a standard head screwdriver, these prongs back on the outer case, and they said that the membrane inside was ripped and they repaired it. You can get these from MIELE USA, or you can get it from eBay. I'd recommend getting a new one, and then you can separate these two halves. Just gotta maybe bend the prongs back a little bit more to get it loose. Okay, get these separated. There we go. That outer ring off. And then separate these two halves. Looks like maybe you push them out here. Finally pry these apart. This comes out and you've got a membrane down here, and he mentioned that on theirs there was a tear in this membrane and they were able to repair the tear with silicone. So when the pressure comes in through here from the pump, pushes on this diaphragm, pushes this up, and as that goes up, it pushes in on this piece of copper right here, and that closes a little switch to tell the computer that there's enough pressure. Let's take this little plate off. So you get enough pressure built up in there, and it's going to let that close, and that's going to lift up. You can even hear it click. Lift up, and that's going to let that terminal and that terminal close, which is the ground. Oh wait, is that the ground? What is that? It's going to let, yeah, it's going to let this one, which is the middle terminal, and that one, which is the first terminal, it's going to close that circuit. So when the pressure comes up in there, it's going to push in on this plate, and it's going to click, but it's going to take a certain amount of pressure to do that. It looks like, though, you may be able to manipulate that with this screw here. The other screw allows this plate to go down lower, so if you turn it counterclockwise, it lowers it, And then it's going to take, I believe it'll take less pressure to close that gap. So that's another thing you could consider if your dishwasher is just not creating enough pressure anymore for whatever reason. By turning this screw counterclockwise, it'll lower that plate, and then should be more likely that this will close, its contact will close. Let's see what this switch does, or this screw does. I'll back it out now. So the further I go with the middle screw, the further I go out, that to me feels like there's less and less pressure needed to activate that. So I think if you had a pump that just wasn't doing it anymore, you could turn the middle one counterclockwise, and you could turn the corner one also counterclockwise, and then there's going to need to be less pressure here to close the gap. So it looks like counterclockwise, counterclockwise. And then to put it back together, this is going to fit in. When you put this back together, this ground strap piece of metal here lines up with this piece. And then you're going to just push them back together. Until they click. This piece back over. We're just putting this ring back on, and we're going to just give it a little compression with the pliers, and that's going to make that rubber membrane nice and watertight again. We have to squish these down, and we have to bend the prongs in. Make sure they're all coming down far enough. That ring, once you bend those prongs in, is what's really helping to create that watertight seal. You do have to get these in nice and tight before you bend those back. So a big pair of channel locks would be good to create the inward pressure to lock those in. Now I'm going to use my pliers. I'm going to push in, lock it in, crimp that over. Did these two corners, now I'll do these two corners. There we go. Alright, do these guys. And lock it and then twist it down to have it lock in. That's a good one. Locked in.
Thanks so much for watching our video. We really appreciate your support. And when you get a chance, please press the subscribe button below so you can be subscribed, and also the notification bell so we can send you more videos about appliance repair. Please also give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. If you really liked the video and it really helped you, please press this new applaud button and you can show your support and also get a nice clapping hands for your video. Thanks again.